Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. When I was a kid, just 6 years old, my parents got divorced because my father was having an affair with this woman who later became my stepmom. During the settlement, my mom and dad decided that my father should be the one to raise me as he was financially more stable and was able to provide an environment for me in which I could thrive. On the other hand, my mom, who worked at a department store, was going to live with her sister and couldn't take me with her as it'd just be problematic for everyone involved. And that's why I ended up growing up with my dad and my stepmom. But even though the majority of the time I was in my dad's presence, I had a stronger bond with my mom. She wasn't able to give me all the things money could buy, but she sure as heck made sure that all my emotional needs were met. She invested her time in me while my dad invested his money. That doesn't mean that I hate my father. I actually really appreciate him, and because even though he wasn't a good husband to my mom, he was a great dad to me. And that's why I really wanted him to be at my wedding. But the problem was my stepmom. I knew if my stepmom came to my wedding, it would really hurt my mom, who hated the woman that ruined her life. I couldn't do that to my mom. Also, the fact that my grandparents were going to be present and they all are very uncomfortable with how my parents' marriage turned out to be was another factor in me deciding not to invite my stepmom. So when I sent the card to my dad, I made sure to tell him that he doesn't get a +1. But nothing ever goes according to plan. My stepmom ended up coming to my wedding uninvited, and because I wanted to avoid causing a scene, I didn't kick her out. That was the biggest mistake of my life, because my mom and her side of the family were already uncomfortable with her presence, and they avoided her and pretended like she was invisible. This made my stepmom mad, but what sent her over the edge was my reception speech, where I didn't include her when I was talking about being thankful for my dad to raise me. She ended up drinking heavily that day and started verbally abusing me for being a brat and not appreciating her kindness when she allowed me to stay at her place with my dad. Her intoxicated behavior put everyone on the groom's side on edge, and my in laws were talking for days about how unsophisticated my family was and how I might turn out to be like them. My stepmom's behavior essentially ruined my wedding and my future with my in laws, as they firmly believed I was a maniac too for too long. It was only a few years back when I was fed up with being made the person to be wary of all our family get togethers and had a heart to heart with mother in law and explained to her how what she thought of me wasn't true. It took a lot of patience and time to have a healthy relationship with my in laws. And I hated my stepmom for putting me through it. I was able to finally show my in laws my true self, and I wouldn't have survived all this while among them if it wasn't for my husband's support or his standing up for me. I really do owe him my sanity. It's been 8 years since my wedding, and not once did I talk to my stepmom. I broke off all contact with her, but last month I found out that my dad passed away, and in his funeral, I ended up facing my stepmom. I was still not ready to talk to her and avoided her during the ceremony. But a week later, she showed up to my house. I don't know who gave her my house address, probably someone from my dad's funeral. But when I opened the door and saw her standing there, I was surprised, and it wasn't a pleasant one. I was tempted to just close the door on her face, but she said we should at least talk. I grudgingly let her in because I thought maybe she changed in the last few years and would actually apologize for her behavior. But I was wrong. Forget about an apology. That woman didn't even have the manners to sit properly and went around my living room touching stuff and messing it all up. When I got irritated, I asked her to either start talking about what she wants or leave. She was staring at me like I was some kind of rabid animal. Even her presence a few feet away from me was irking me. Finally, when she started talking, she told me that my dad's will was found and all he had left her was the house they lived in. Turns out my dad didn't save anything from his job as a history professor, and because my stepmom hasn't worked in ages and depended on my dad's money, she doesn't have anything to live off. Now she wants me to step up as the daughter she helped raise and support her. She didn't look even a little bit ashamed while asking me to basically let her mooch off of me. If I wasn't so shocked at her preposterous proposal, I would have actually praised her boldness. When I finally found my words, all I did was ask her one question. I wanted to know if she ever felt sorry in her life for what happened at my wedding. But her answer was just as arrogant as ever. She said, why would she feel ashamed when she had every right to be at that wedding and I should have realized my mistake in not inviting her in all of these years? I lost my cool at these words. I asked her to leave, and when she just stood there, I forcibly kicked her out. I told her to never show her face in front of me ever again, and that I don't give a rat's ass about how she survives now. For all I care, she could go begging on the street. Then I slammed the door shut. AITA here for leaving her on the streets to starve? Is it my responsibility to see that she is well and surviving? Should I feel a little bit of guilt for kicking her out just like that? So it's been about 2 weeks since my stepmom was here and asked me to support her after my dad died, and she was left penniless. And because of how she essentially ruined my life and my wedding, I don't even want her to be within 100 yards of me, let alone for her to be a part of my life that I'll have to see on a regular basis. But she keeps on calling and texting, and even though I have blocked her number, she wouldn't stop. It looks like whoever she's getting her information from must be the biggest jackass of this planet because they are divulging private information of my family to her. She got my husband's phone digits and last night called on his cell phone. Because I had no intention of involving my husband in this mess, especially after what he had to face with his family because of her, I didn't tell him about her request. But last night, she yapped her big mouth to him, and he's asking me for the details. When I told him what happened only a week after the funeral, he got really furious and told me I should have called the cops and lodged a complaint against my stepmom for harassment. When I told him about the number of blocked calls and texts, he said that it'll be easier to file a complaint because the screenshots of my call logs and text logs would serve as the proof. So tomorrow I'll call the cops and file the complaint. After I filed a complaint against my stepmom for harassment about a month ago, the cops gave her a warning and asked her to stop harassing me. She was charged with a fine for what she did and was let off easy because nothing major had happened. And for the last month or so, it does look like she was heeding the warning given to her. But the peace in my life could never last when it comes to her. After a month of quiet, she again showed up at my doorstep. Her face looked haggard, and she had eye bags under her eyes. She looked like a sick person, and for a second my heart lurched a little bit. But I reminded myself of what I had to face because of this woman, and no amount of humanity could make up for the things she did to me. So I told her to leave before I called the cops and they would arrest her. But she didn't listen to me and started begging me for money. She said she's broke and really needs money to buy something to eat. She said I should help her just once until she finds a job and then she'd never come to me again. But I didn't listen to a word she said because I knew that's how it all starts. It's just the one time that turns into once more and eventually becomes a never-ending cycle of begging and giving. I called the cops on her and they just took her away. Hopefully this time she'll learn her lesson. So a few days ago, I updated you guys about how the cops had arrested my stepmom because she didn't heed their warning after I filed a harassment complaint against her. Well, this time she had to stay in jail and I didn't find it necessary enough to find out what happened to her. The very next day when she came to my house, my husband talked to a lawyer so that we could file a restraining order. We went through all the legal procedures and the final paperwork should arrive any day now. I was informed that someone paid bail for my stepmom. I don't know who it was, but I just hope that they'll be able to throw some money at her so that she never comes begging at my door again. She had ruined my life once before, and I don't want her doing that again. NTA, nah, you're not the a-hole. That stepmother is the biggest a-hole I've ever heard about, and she thinks of herself as the queen around whom people should kneel. That's some entitled BS, and you don't owe her anything. NTA, you're not an AH. If anything, it was your entitled stepmom that's an AH. She didn't do shit by the looks of it. It was your dad that provided you financial aid and your own mom that gave you mental support. Your stepmom was essentially useless in your life, and nothing could change that fact. You don't owe her anything that you have now, so don't feel guilt over anything. You did the right thing in telling her no straight to her face. My wife, Tamara, 27, female, and I, 29, male, had our first wedding anniversary very recently. Tamara wanted to have a big party to celebrate because it's our first and also because we had a relatively scaled back wedding due to restrictions. She booked out a restaurant, ordered a custom cake, etc., and seemed to have had fun planning everything. I was on board with everything until a few weeks ago. My brother and his wife were in a serious accident. He died on the scene, and my sister in law was taken to hospital, and she died the next day. This hit me and my family very hard, as you can probably imagine. And if it all that wasn't enough, we got the news afterwards that sister in law was expecting. It's just devastating, and I'm struggling to process it. The issue first arose because I told Tamara that we should cancel, or at least postpone, our anniversary party. We could go out to dinner together and do something, just the two of us, but no party. Tamara said everything's been booked and planned and we can't just cancel now. She told me to take my time and think about it rationally. But honestly, all my rational thinking said was that I didn't want to party in such a time, which I told her, but Tamara replied things like, would brother and sister in law want us to put everything on hold? And a party like this might lift my mood a bit? We had argued over this, and I eventually told Tamara that she can party all she wants, but I don't want to be a part of it. She shrugged it off and said that I'd come around. Again, I told her multiple times I didn't want to go, but every time she said, I need to lift my mood, or it'll make me feel better, and things like that. So the party was this past weekend, and I didn't end up going. Tamara's been furious with me that I made her look bad and let her down, and she cut the time short. My in laws have been on my ass nonstop, saying that I could have just shown up for an hour or two and then made an excuse to leave. And I'm a terrible husband for abandoning my wife. So I'm here for third party opinions. If I was the AH for not attending. NTA, but your wife is. Being married is not only about celebrating the good moments, it's about being present for the bad too. Your wife lacks empathy and good sense. I'm sorry, but this would be the hill I would die on. She has been dismissive of your grieving process and your family since it happened, and you asked her to postpone the wedding anniversary. I think the wife could have had good intentions. All of the things she's saying aren't out of the realm of possibility. The accident was weeks before the party. OP might have felt well enough to attend. That being said, when it was clear he wasn't going to feel up to it, she should have moved it. At minimum, she has no right being pissed at OP for not coming. NTA. NTA, your wife just told you that her social standing, a fancy party, and some deposits are more important than your grieving and mental health. On top of that, her side of the family backed her on that. I'm not suggesting you do anything rash, but consider this a high watermark for her priorities and how she will treat you going forward. We have some background here. My sister in law is my brother's second wife, and she is the stepmother to his three kids aged 17, 15, and 14. My brother, Sam, lost his first wife when the kids were very small and remarried quickly, in part because he did not want to be alone, and also because he did not want his kids to grow up without a mom. They have been married for 10 years now, and the three kids in question do not call sister in law mom. They do not want anyone else to call her their mom either. She is the mother to my two nephews with my brother, but the discussion in question is regarding the older three. My brother and sister in law went to therapy with the kids out of concern that children so young were so resistant to calling a new mother figure mom, someone who loved them and was genuinely there wanting the best for them. They ended up blaming their maternal family for the lack of title for sister-in-law and attempted to cut them out of the children's lives when the maternal family refused to tell the kids they wanted them to call sister-in-law mom because she was mom now. The courts were brought in, and that put a stop to removing a contact. Over the years, the kids have been corrected many times. There have also been many punishments given out because the kids rebel against sister-in-law and have said things to hurt her. It's basically one big fight at their house. The rest of my family are kind of mixed on all this, and some feel like Sam and sister-in-law are wrong to push, but others believe something is amiss because the kids have not mellowed out towards sister-in-law at all and still refuse to have anyone speak about her as their mom. I think they also believe their maternal side of the family are to blame, and they believe they are wrong for not encouraging it. I have spoken to my nephew and nieces. I know their mom's family have never said anything. What they do is talk about their mom and share her memory with them, and it led to a connection forming through the maternal family. I think it's unfair to keep pushing them to call sister-in-law mom, and I think a focus should have been put on giving them a happy home life versus pushing for something the kids have expressed they don't want. A few days ago, Sam and sister-in-law were talking to our family about the kids going back to school and how my 14-year-old niece corrected the school admin who referred to sister-in-law as her mom. Sister-in-law talked about how upset she was and how she doesn't understand how the kids can still be so wrong on this. Sam said he wanted to pull his hair out. I suggested, and not for the first time, that they should come to terms with the reality of things. Sam said the reality is sister-in-law is their mom and has been for 10 years. I told them the reality is sister-in-law is not their mom. She's their stepmother, and you can't force feelings on that to change. I am now considered the AH. They said I only hurt sister-in-law more and rubbed her face in the rejection by saying it. AITA? OP, you are NTA. You advocated for the children and their legit feelings. Also, I'm quite a bit flabbergasted that your brother tries so hard to erase his previous marriage and love he used to have for their actual mom who passed away. I get that he'd like his new wife to take on the role of loving stepmom and all be able to get along. But the fact is that she wasn't the one who gave birth to them, and nor was their mom. You can't force people who have a memory of their mom to call another person that. The fact they brought it to court with the maternal side of your nephew, niece's family says enough. They want to pretend to be a happy, non-blended family, but don't accept the feelings of the kids that they are actually not. NTA. If the kids were 7, 5, and 4 when they lost their mother, then they were old enough to have coherent memories and a proper relationship with her. Therefore, it's ludicrous for your brother and sister-in-law to think that they can just wipe her away and install sister-in-law as mommy. Wanting to be considered a mother figure is understandable, but the notion that she is their mom is insulting to the memory of your brother's late wife. And if I were those kids, I'd be really put off too. Sister-in-law needs to back the heck off, or those kids are going to hate her guts forever. NTA, they're calling you an a-hole because you're saying a truth sister-in-law doesn't want to hear, that 10 years later the ship has well and truly sailed and they'll never call her mother. They're pointing fingers at the maternal family, but honestly, I think brother and sister-in-law dug the majority of the grave themselves from violently trying to pry the kids from their presumably loved grandparents and for all the punishments they've given out over the years. I wouldn't want anything to do with either of them after all these stunts, and would probably get way too much satisfaction from denying sister-in-law all the time. If bro and sister-in-law are throwing such a hissy fit now, I'm dreading the meltdown that will happen when the kiddos all hit 18 and run for the hills. LOL.